Hi, this is Finn Stowers from Cancelled, and today you'll be watching Hell's on My Shelf. So, the first thing on my shelf is Green Day's International Super Hits record. This album kind of means a lot to the brothers and I. We all kind of chipped together to get this, the CD at least, when we were all really little kids, and it was our first introduction into punk music and Green Day, and we listened to that album probably every single day going to school in the car. So this one holds a special place in my heart. Next up, we have MCR's, or My Chemical Romance's, May Death Never Stop You. And this is a great compilation album that has a good variety of songs all throughout their discography. In the future, I'd probably like to build off of this one and kind of go back through their first records and get some of those ones, but this one also is a pretty special edition one that was given to me by a good friend of mine. Yeah, this is a great album. It also kind of led us into the music that we are into today, so it's a good one. Next up is an older one. It's an original pressing of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass. And this was our dad's back in the day, and if you can see, it's barely hanging on there still, but it's still piecing together. This album means a lot just because George Harrison is a pretty big inspiration to me as a guitarist and kind of just as a person in general. So I like this one a lot. It's got a lot of really good hits on it, and you know, it was still done with Apple Records, I believe, as you can see there, the Apple. So yeah, this is a really great one. Might try and find one in better condition later down the road, so I don't have to keep breaking this one out. It's still a little scratch, but you know, we do with what we can. So this one, yeah, holds a good spot in my heart for that. Next up, we have an original pressing of the Doors' first album. They're self-titled, and the Doors were always kind of a fan of mine when we were growing up as kids, listening to it with our parents in the car, driving around. And I always thought the stuff that Ray, the keyboardist, was doing in the band was ahead of its time in a way. He, you know, played bass and keyboards. I feel like kind of drove the band from a perspective that you don't normally see in a lot of bands, especially during this time. There was, you know, a lot of ingenuity going on, and you know, it was one of the first bands I ever heard about that didn't have a bass player in it, and I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, it's really sweet. Original pressing from, I believe, 60 something, not sure, but great record. I really wanna stay here. Next up, we have Paul Simon's, what's this one called? Still Crazy After All the Years. And this album was kind of introduced to me not too long ago by a good friend of mine. He showed me the song 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover, which I had never heard before, which I was pretty surprised that our parents never showed us it, but yeah, that one is a really good song. Reminds me of some good times back in the day in high school and just driving around with my friends, causing ruckus and being in shenanigans. Not too much to say else other than that, but great album.
Make a new plan, Stan. You don't need to be coy, Roy. Just get yourself free.
Next up is a 10 years after greatest hits. This one was specifically done through London and a BBC record company, I believe. It's really cool. It just got a lot of good songs on it, and my whole thing with 10 years after was when I was about 14 years old, and you know, during that time you're trying to find new, better music and get out of your middle school awkward teen phase of bad music, and my dad would make me listen to one 10 Years After song every day going to school with him. So it wasn't necessarily my choice to listen to these, but it was definitely ingrained in my head, and by the end of that time I was already listening to them on their own. And they are an incredible four-piece band. These two right here, Alvin Lee and Leo Lyons, are huge inspirations to me as far as musicians. Alvin Lee is a ridiculous guitar player, and Leo Lyons is one of the craziest bass players I've ever seen, and felt like they were somewhat underrated for their time. And yeah, I think that they were just, way ahead of what they were going for. And if you ever get a chance, Woodchopper's Ball, the 7-minute, 8-minute song, definitely give it a listen. Some good fast jazz for you. So that was my record collection at the moment, minus a few others, but the ones that I would still like to have that will probably come next would be another 10 Years After record, which was their first album. That was just a self-titled debut album that came out in around '67, and it is just another really unbelievable album that was above its time. And you watch live videos from that era and you'll be mind blown from it. Another record that I'd like to get one day is Gorillaz' first debut album. This was actually the first CD I ever bought as a kid, and I've been a Gorillaz fan ever since then, but I've always wanted a vinyl of this album in particular, just because it is another one that's really ahead of its time. I mean, this music was coming out in 2001, and I still think it's really cool music, and nothing has really come close to being similar to it since then, other than what other music Damon Albarn has been putting out. The last album that I'd like to get in the near future would be Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique album, because we grew up with License to Ill when we were very little, similar to the Gorillaz album. We bought it probably at Walmart or something when we were very little kids, and we would make our mom listen to it to school every day, and we loved License to Ill. But as I got older, I started listening to the other albums, and Paul's Boutique easily became one of my favorites, and I felt like it was a step up from what they had done with License to Ill. And I just think it's a really cool collectible album that is also very ahead of its time. Thanks for watching, and this has been one episode of Hell's on My Shelf. Stay tuned for more canceled info coming up here in the near future.